welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha, Lakes-Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We ask that you like, comment, share, subscribe to this program. This is great information you're probably not hearing in the mainstream media, so tell your friends about it. If you can't watch or download it at this exact moment, you can do so on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it, it is out there. Amazing content, as I just mentioned. Happy New Year to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're bringing on a first-time person to the show, Chris Warkentin. I so apologize for not inviting you sooner. I feel horrible. Grand Prairie Mackenzie, Deputy Whip. I am so sorry. I feel horrible. But what a way to kick off 2024.
I tell you, it's just great to be here. Thanks, Jamie, for having me.
Well, I appreciate all the time you're giving us today. We're going to talk about a video you posted just before Christmas, late last year. And it had to do with everything is broken. And I think most people can think about one or two instances in their life where they should be relying on government services, where they pay taxes and hope to receive those services, but yet are finding backlogs or closed doors wherever they go.
You know, it's just unbelievable. I think you'd probably have the same experience, but my office has been just overrun by people coming into my office just asking, you know, if we can help give them basic government services. These are people that have sent in their passports months ago with the expectation that they were giving plenty of time so that they could travel during the holiday season, finding out that, you know, they weren't able to get their passports on time. You know, we're hearing example after example, if it be immigration, if it be a whole host of other things, but it seems like every department that people are seeking support from, it's just broken. And I just kept hearing this over and over and over again. It didn't matter what department people were dealing with. They just felt like they were hitting roadblock after roadblock. People saying, you know, and oftentimes it wasn't even people saying no. The government wasn't saying no. They just weren't saying anything at all.
That's right.
And it just is so frustrating, I think, for people that believe that government should be there when they need it, and especially at a time when Canadians are feeling, and it's actually true that they're paying higher taxes than they ever have in Canadian history. You know, people have a right to ask, you know, why aren't we getting any level of service for this exceptional amount of money that the government has spent over the last number of years?
And this really snowballed because I remember right at the pandemic, everything was closed. Even Service Canada, when people were questioning whether or not they were going to be able to get a paycheck, what benefits were available to them. And Service Canada, in large part, was closed for a lot of that time, right at the beginning, the most crucial part. And our offices became de facto Service Canada offices because nobody else in the federal government, except the managers trying to figure it all out, we're providing service.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I just have to, you know, commend every member of Parliament that kept their doors open, whose staff continued to do the heavy lifting of trying to make sure that people, during a difficult time, actually had somebody to talk to, kind of an opportunity to chat with somebody that could maybe help navigate through the challenges of bureaucracy. It's been unprecedented, and I know that your experience has probably been very similar to ours. Not only did the government stop serving people, but then they curtailed the avenues in which MPs could actually serve their constituents. And so oftentimes, you know, we were able to we took over, our offices took over for many of the bureaucrats that were no longer working in office or seemed to not be answering the phones. And then all of a sudden, you know, the avenues that we were using to get information for our constituents started to close. And so the government actually were limiting the ability for us to help do their job. And so it's frustrating. Canadians deserve answers. But it's been remarkable over the last number of weeks as we've started to peel back as to why this is. And so we've now heard that the government is considering a back to work order for a lot of people, government employees that have been working from their homes. This is startling when you actually hear the numbers. The government is now themselves admitting that they have a problem in that there's tens of thousands of bureaucrats that haven't been back to the office yet. I don't know, Jamie. I don't know any other group of people in the country that have been able to work from home without any requirement to go back to the office.
Even a bit of hybrid. Like, well, I don't know anyone working at the local coffee shop or the grocery store that got to do this. The plumbers, the mechanics, they all.
Even those companies that you knew that had better flexibility in terms of, you know, that their jobs were conducive to this type of a setup, accounting firms, law offices, they've all gone back because they've recognized that the work just wasn't happening in the same way. The collaboration that happens when you're together in the office, the ability to actually have physical files that you can move through. We're now hearing stories of tens of thousands, over nearly 60,000 immigration files that were sent to computer systems that weren't being manned by people. And so can you imagine? You and I have experienced the frustration of not being able to get answers for our constituents that have files that are being dealt with by Immigration Canada. We've heard about these backlogs. As a matter of fact, there's over 2 million people that are currently in the backlog. But we just imagined that it was people were being slow in getting through these files. Now we're finding out that there was over 60,000 files that were just in computer systems that were never going to be looked at because the employees no longer worked at Immigration Canada.
Yeah, that's really remarkable, and the media, for some reason, has not been blowing this story up. To me, if I had gone through the process, I had filled out my immigration application, I'm waiting to either get my status or come into the country and find out that my file went to somebody who doesn't even exist, who doesn't work there anymore. Now we have a backup of over 2 million cases.
Yeah, it's really devastating because there's a human story behind each one of these files. In some cases, there are people that are languishing here in Canada, not able to work because they're waiting for a work permit. In some cases, these are people that are separated, husbands and wives or mums and dads away from their children. They're expecting to be reunited, but their application is in wait. You know, it's being looked at by bureaucrats, and to find out that these 60,000 applications were just languishing in no man's land is just unthinkable.
It is,
and it's heartbreaking, quite frankly.
Well, we saw the lineups outside Passport Canada and offices outside Montreal and other cities, the massive waits, the issues we're having. Let's fast forward to just recently, before we rose for the House of Commons, the Trade Minister being caught out by the Ethics Commissioner for giving her friend tens of thousands of dollars. It seems that it's not whether or not you have the best product or not here in Ottawa. It's who you're connected to and who your buddy is.
Yeah, you know, when you think about the number of people that are struggling these days with, 1.5 million Canadians that are using food banks, that wasn't the case just months ago. We're finding out that, 500,000 kids are included in those numbers. When we hear about people that are just really, really struggling, the only people that seem to be getting ahead are people that are connected to this Liberal Party.
It really does.
You have this example of the commissioner, the ethics commissioner, finding the minister having broken ethics laws, having given a contract to her friend, and the minister says, well, it's okay, I won't do it again.
Yeah,
please.
No consequences.
No consequences. The Prime Minister was asked. As a matter of fact, one of our colleagues asked the Prime Minister specifically today, is that the only reason that he's not firing the minister is because he would be holding her to a higher account than he was held, because, of course, he has been in violation of the ethics laws. The first Prime Minister to not only been found guilty of breaking ethics laws once, but twice and multiple other times for other ministers within his government. This is an unprecedentedly broken government, and you can see why nothing is working.
Absolutely.
Everything feels broken because
it's right from the top.
It's right from the top. There's levels of just complete disarray, and I can understand that the people that work for these ministers would just be throwing up their hands and saying, I can't, we can't help people when we have a government that's so lacking in drive to actually help the right people, when they're preoccupied with making sure that their friends are taken care of. You know what is actually one of the more offensive parts of this whole thing with the minister having been found guilty of giving her friend this contract? It was at the height of the pandemic.
That's true.
This is a time when most people were struggling to make ends meet, and here we have a minister giving a sweetheart deal to her BFF, and and it seems like there's no consequences. And this is what really has started to frustrate Canadians: is why is there no consequences for these things? I hear it time and time again. I'm sure you do as well. Mm-hmm. And I just have to remind people that at the end of the day, the Canadian people have to fire and hire their representatives, and quite frankly, it's time that we actually have an election that really is a determination if or not these folks are really should be rewarded with their job going forward. Like the job interview and the decision as to if or not this should happen really, it's in the hands of the people.
It really is, yep.
You know, we're looking at the possibility of an election this spring. Obviously, Jagmeet and Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau have had this marriage of sorts to try to keep this minority government from falling. But there seems to be some tension there. I don't know if you've seen that over the last number of months, but before Christmas, we saw the threats from Jagmeet Singh talking about, you know, just feeling like he wasn't getting the full deal that he had hoped, and of course, he's putting some pressure on. So I don't know. This year we'll see what happens, but it could be we could be into an election before you know it.
Well, we'll certainly see. So that goes on to the next part I want to talk about. Our leader Pierre Poilievre talks about it many times. He mentions it quite often. Starting to manufacture, to build things money buys. So we're not relying on other countries bringing manufacturing here. But of course, it's not as easy as that. We need to ensure that the environment is right to allow private sector growth to succeed. And it just seems that every industry, our anchor industries, natural resources, mining, lumber, on and on, it just seems they're all being hurt by the policies of this government. Whereas that allows the free market to succeed, right? You build a product or a service people want, they buy it, and lots of choice makes a better, competition makes everything better. But it seems in this government, it seems that Ottawa's fine with picking the winners and the losers into a very narrow typecast and what they want. So innovation is what the government wants, right? It's not whether or not it works or not. It's whether or not you're connected and the government believes that's what the product is.
You know, it really is the government of press conferences. If they think that it will sound good during a press conference, they'll be happy to make an announcement and move things along. But you know, it's startling when you look at the numbers, when you compare us to other countries. We know that we have a competitive disadvantage in Canada because of the government's policies. We live in a country where there's untold natural resources. You know, there's immense amounts of farmland. We know that there's immense amount of land to build on in this country. There's really nothing that we need that we can't, you know, that we don't have some of the elements that make us the best in the world. You know, when it comes to energy, when it comes to you know, the ability to build houses, all the things, but yet we're seemingly unable to get any new projects built. And what I found interesting is in Canada, on average, now this is across the federal and the provincial, the municipal, you know, different levels of government, the average time for getting a building permit approved is over 250 days. So that includes housing, that includes large projects. We're talking about, you know, across the board. In South Korea, it's 28 days. So I'm not, you know, when we look at our competitors, where the money can go, where development is happening, you know, we're at a massive disadvantage simply because of bureaucratic encumbrances. So my view is we have to get this government should get out of the way of picking winners and losers, and really free up the ability for people to use innovation, to use you know, to build things and to grow our economy. And really that's going to be the challenge over the next number of years. As a matter of fact, here in Canada, you know, just, you know, we're building LNG. The world currently needs it.
They're begging
for it. We're seeing the Germans come to Canada begging to have LNG,
no
liquefied
business case
natural
in Canada,
gas.
apparently.
But the Prime Minister says, well, there's no business case here. So of course Germany then has to go to the Middle East and get a long-term contract. Of course there's a business case for it.
Of course,
you know, there's people all over Europe that are suffering this winter with unprecedented you know, cold, as well as, of course, the inability to bring in energy from Russia. They're cutting off Russia, which is, of course, the right thing to do. But we should be able to step up and fill that gap. So in Canada, over 7 years, we you know, the permitting and the building of an LNG terminal in BC, you know, it's been 7 years since this application went in. It still isn't built. In Germany, where they decided that they needed to get this that this should happen, they built an import terminal, approved it, and built it in less than 100 days. Like, it is remarkable. When people want to do stuff, when they're unleashed to do stuff,
they are. But it also seems when the government gets out of the way.
When the government.
Or sometimes even to the next step, if the government wants something, it could happen. If it doesn't, it will slow it down. That seems to be a major issue. And when capital dollars takes the path of least resistance every single time. And when they, as you mentioned, they see Canada as a roadblock, as something that you'll have to wait forever to get a permit. If you do get it, the process is not guaranteed. they'll go elsewhere.
Yep.
And we've saw tens of billions leave in oil and gas.
Yep.
The lumber industry is hurting. Like over and over again, we just are getting left out. And some would say by its choice. I say sometimes the government's doing it to you, not for you, right? They are specifically deciding this is a direction they don't want Canada to take.
Yeah, it's remarkable. You know, when you think of the manufacturing sector, you think of all the sectors across this country that have really been the leading industries in our country. Over the last 7 years, they've all been hard hit. And what we know is in a increasingly, in a world where money can move anywhere. The money's just leaving Canada.
Yep.
Billions of dollars have left this country. We've seen massive companies that have transitioned outside of Canada that used to be, Canadian companies taking the money elsewhere. They didn't get out of the industry. They just went somewhere else to invest the money, to create the jobs, to create and of course, when these companies leave, they take the jobs with them. The tax revenues that would otherwise be going into our healthcare system, into our education system, into our infrastructure here in Canada, it goes somewhere else. And unfortunately, Canadians are poorer for it, not only us today, but into the generations to come.
Yeah, we don't actually even see the innovation happening, right? The innovation is what also keeps the job going because companies invest in research and development. That keeps the brains here. And we saw a massive brain drain in the last few years because these companies are, like you said, going elsewhere and using those brains to create the next best thing. And Canada is just missing out every single step of the way.
Yeah. But we can change things.
We can change. That's where I was going to go now. How can we change that?
Well, quite frankly, I think that there's a number of things that the government has to do. But most importantly, I think primarily the government has to figure out ways to get out of the way. Where we see multiple redundancies between different levels of government, we've got to figure out ways that we can streamline those things, not to reduce to reduce the protections of the environment or human health and different things like that, but making sure that we don't have these redundant requirements that just pile on unnecessarily on top of one another. I think the other thing that we can do is really bring the innovative minds of this country to the table.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, what so often happens is we have government bureaucrats, people in ivory towers in Ottawa, making decisions for industries and for groups of people that have no connection to those industries or the people that these policies will impact. And so I think that more importantly than ever, it's time that we tear down some of these bureaucracies and these encumbrances, and really, as our leaders talked about, removing the gatekeepers and really bringing people to the table that will build our industries, build our economy, build our futures for our young people for the generations to come. More than ever, we have to do that right now, and I think that I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic. I believe in this country. I believe in the people more than anything. Of course, we're sitting on a gold mine when it comes to opportunities, when it comes to our natural resources, when it comes to the educated people that live in Canada. We have so many things that are second to no other place in the world. And more than ever, we just need to be able to bring we have to bring the people to the table. Because that's what they're really what give me hope. We can get the government out of the way and start to figure out ways to the people will crash through all the systems that really hold them back if we just allow them to come to the table and start doing that.
Absolutely, and get these large corporations just pitching their product to government. Right? Like it's easier to sell your product to government than it is the marketplace and actually have a true competition, right? You squeeze down the first-time business owner, the small business owner, and you create a barriers to competition and a very uneven playing field. That's why we have so many monopolies in our grocery industry, in our telecommunications, because new companies aren't able to start up because of barriers in the marketplace. Sorry.
Yeah, and but you're absolutely right. Just jumping onto that, like it's about the government picking winners and losers.
Absolutely.
And at some point, we just level the playing field, allow for innovation to rise up, and obviously those that are most innovative, those that meet the needs of the people, they'll do better. And of course, it forces other folks to up their game. And really, that's what creates the most vibrant, the most the best and most flourishing economies in the world.
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. You watch countries you mentioned earlier, South Korea. It started from after a number of conflicts and issues internally, they created themselves a powerhouse, an economic powerhouse, just by unleashing the conservative principles of free markets, and that's how they did it.
Absolutely. We have to trust people.
Trust people.
This is what I've learned is, if government has a problem, the solution is not found often in Ottawa, not found with the government, it's found with the people, the folks out in the common people who have a common understanding of what really is going on.
But sadly, with this government, they don't realize that. They double down on the fact that, planning from Ottawa, the central planners, they'll keep planning, right?
Yep.
They'll keep planning. Chris, I always give the guests the last word. Feel free to close it out on anything you want to talk about.
Well, I can tell you that I'm just so optimistic about where this country can go. I'm just so optimistic about the people that call Canada home. And of course, I represent what I often say are the best folks and the hardest working folks in the country. And I know that you'd say something similar about the folks that you know and who you represent. I just, everywhere I go in this country, people have solutions to the challenges that we face. And I think that if government just began, if we had a government that trusted the people, our country would be so much further ahead.
Chris Warkentin, Member of Parliament, Grande Prairie Mackenzie, also the Deputy Whip. First time on the show, not the last. We do appreciate your time as well. We ask that you like, comment, subscribe, share this program. This is information I guarantee you're not hearing on the mainstream media. And of course, please tell your friends you can listen to it maybe on your ride to work by CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify platforms. It's all available there for you. New content every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, low taxes, less government, more freedom. That's the blueprint.